All right. A little of my background. I'm a game developer. Started making games around 2002 professionally. And I'm going to be talking today about hubs, which are games co-working spaces. If you're not familiar with them, I'll go a little bit about them, but hopefully you'll be aware of them at least on some level. This is essentially our space. It's based in Leamington Spa. It's about an hour north of here on the train, and we have room for around 30 developers. We currently have 2 active teams plus outsourcers working from the space. We established it in May 2014. It's set up as a not-for-profit, so it's not designed to make money in itself. What it's designed to do is to be adaptable, flexible, and allow game makers to make games in ways that require new ways of thinking. We facilitate the production of games, and we also take a serious role on hosting events, connecting developers together in interesting ways, and I'll go talk about that more later. But at its most basic, a hub is a place where you plug in, a place with internet, desks, and coffee. At its basic, that's what it is, and hopefully you all are very familiar with hubs as it is already. But when I was doing the research for this talk, I started looking at hubs around the world, and the last 3 years they have literally exploded. They're all over the planet now. Most recently, I think they opened up in Argentina, and I saw one opened up in Jordan as well. So it's an idea that's caught on. It is working, and hopefully you've heard of a couple of these places, like the Arcade in Melbourne, there's Sweden Game Arena. They stretch all the way down to New Zealand in Wellington. They are literally all over the world, and developers are using them as places to collaborate, to share ideas, as ways of getting their games made in a very cost-effective way. And I'll talk a little bit about the cost later. As we're in the UK, I'll share a few of them that are here. If you're from a hub, and I've missed your hub, I do apologize, but these are the ones that I found in the UK. There are more. Rocket Desk in Guildford, one of the more recent hubs, are becoming very successful. We see studios like Lionhead closing down, and a lot of the developers are going to work at Rocket Desks, and they're starting to set up successful studios. It was crazy they closed down that studio because they lost their talent, and now that talent is making the next exciting games in these adaptive, flexible spaces. They're doing interesting things on new platforms. To go into a little more detail, there's the loading bar in London. Are you all familiar with the loading bar? It's just about a 30-minute walk up the road from here. And James Dance there, he's an entrepreneur. He set up the loading bar. He runs it as a bar, and developers can go there and start working in their games in the basement there, and he runs special events. He works with companies, publishers like Devolver, for example, to host an event that promotes their games, and he's making that work profitably for him whilst facilitating game developers at the same time. And recently he hosted an event with Warchild. They did a game jam, which we took part in, and there were lots of developers that turned up there and again collaborated. They shared ideas and did something positive for the society. To go to the other end of the spectrum, we have a setup in Berlin called Factory, and they are more of a high-end hub. They look at matching companies like Twitter and SoundCloud and the developers that meet there in a specialized way. So they filter out. They are very selective with the people that they let in there. And then again, let's switch over to the other end of the spectrum. We have setups like Stugan, which is about bringing creative people together. Has everyone heard of Robin Baumgarten of Line Wobbler? He's an incredibly talented developer. But this is more arts-based, and these are creative experiences that are coming out of games co-working spaces like this. So there's a very wide spectrum of what a games hub can be. And that is because at their core, hubs are very adaptable, and they allow for flexibility. Why is this happening? I think Thomas Rawlins adroitly summed it up by just saying, because they work. Things are happening. Hopefully you've seen from the last few slides that games are getting made, innovation is happening, products are getting produced, wealth is being created, jobs are being created. It works. And I think Clara Reeves, who's the president of Hipster Whale, in the last paragraphs there, she says, developers here are working together, not competing against each other, and we're all stronger for it. When people are successful, they're sharing that success and knowledge. And we're seeing that consistently happen from hub to hub to hub, that people are sharing the success that they're finding and benefiting as a result, not only themselves, but each other. It seems that the markets are out there for games that are innovative. There isn't a saturation of great games. What there is a demand for is unique experiences. And again, this is where hubs are helping. in the face of huge change, hubs are facilitating game production. They're addressing the skills requirements. We often have students visit us in the Arch, and they learn how games are actually made, and they're also going to the other hubs, and universities themselves are setting up games hubs. The administration overheads are significantly lower than when you're working at a studio. If you've ever worked at a studio, you often have a large HR department which has restrictive rules which limit your very creativity, which as creators of games experiences is counterproductive in the long term. The cost overheads are significantly lower. I've been meeting with publishers the last 2 days and talking about our burn rates, how much we cost per month to run, and they're going, really? That's like one of us per month. So our cost overheads are incredibly low. And importantly, we're enabling those collaborations. The image there on the right of the screen is our Facebook group, which for the local area, our space hosts 30 people, but the Facebook group hosts 256 people who are sharing jobs. They're sharing, Simon Roth talking about a game jam he's hosting there, and we're collaborating through the internet at the same time. So it's not just about the physical spaces, it's also how we're connected over the internet at the same time. Again, just to go over the costs briefly. So I've worked in studios that cost around $6,000 per month, about $6,000 per month, and I've heard of studios costing as much as $8,500, and rumours of studios that cost more. If we were charging $275 per desk per month, we could feasibly run at $3.5K per man month. So you can see our burn rate is much, much lower. And when we're looking at the funding options that are available, they are quite limited. So we have to make the most of what we have. If you're interested in looking further at the geography of hubs, there are 2 links there. GamesMap UK will list the hubs that are in the UK, but the link above takes you to a develop article that will point out where the hubs are based around the world. So that's, in a nutshell, where we're at with hubs. It's happened, it's working, we're making great stuff. How we made it happen, we had our founding principles, and we decided really that when we were setting up, we didn't want to set up a studio. We were interested in collaborating with other developers. And we had 5 directors with shared responsibility, and legal advice is very important if you're looking to set up a hub. It is expensive, but it is well worth ensuring that you're covered legally, because there are things that could come back and bite you, such as insurance, that if you don't have, you could be in a lot of trouble for. So it's well worth spending on the legal advice that is out there, and there's some great people in this industry who can help you. Initial funding was kindly provided. We work with the Warwick District Council and Warwick County Council, who often councils have buildings that are not in use. And if you go to someone in the council and say, we're part of the games industry, would you like a thriving games industry in your area? They will bite your hand off, and we've seen that consistently happen. In our area, they already recognized that they had a thriving games industry, and they wanted to support us. So they gave us some favorable rates on a space that we wanted to rent. And also the industry itself, we were very kindly supported by Sega Hardlight, who gave us £6,000 to start working with. And the initial budget we started with was £8,000. So with £8,000, you yourself could set up a games co-working space. We had a wonderfully naive motto to start with. Let's put smart people in a smart space and see what happens. A lot of things did happen. We made mistakes and we learned a lot. But that's literally what we started with. Arch 1, our co-working space as it was back then, it was a Labour headquarters. That's why it had the horrible red carpet. The way we got momentum with the space was to start having open door sessions where developers could meet each other. And we were surprised by the attendance that we got from each event that we were hosting. They ranged from 30 developers and grew to 60, 70, 80 developers turning up to these events. So, okay, we've got something here. Let's put our chips down and essentially make it happen. We started decorating. Again, limited budget, but it's amazing what you can do with trestles, kitchen worktops, and a bit of flooring. And this is how the space looked. We had teams working there. They were doing a game jam at this one, and we had people from teams all over the region competing. And it went so well, we found that we could expand. And we moved into an Arch double the size. And because we'd managed to find SCIS investment through the games we produced in Arch 1, we had more money to put into Arch 2, £10,000. And with £10,000, we managed to make this space, put in IKEA lights and lamps. And you can see on the bottom images there, that's typically what it looks like on a working day. On the bottom right, that's us having a Friday review. And that's where we're collaborating together and looking at each other's games, pulling them apart, insulting each other with the hard work that we've done over a week and saying this is how we can do it better. And that's so important to a co-working space, that ability to collaborate. The other aspect that is so important to hubs, and we see happening all over the UK, are the events that are hosted. So these are some of the events that we've just hosted in our space, and there have been many great events hosted at hubs all over the UK. We've worked with UKey, the BFI about tax credits, Autodesk about Maya LT, the affordable version of Maya for making games with, Escape Technologies. We've hosted a Sony event. These have been high-profile events, and people from as far afield as Switzerland have turned up to the events that we've hosted. Chinese delegation came by. We worked with UKey. A lot of Chinese publishers were saying, well, we've seen London. We want to see outside of London, because to them, traveling outside of London is not that far. We were lucky enough to host this event, and the business that started to generate there is still, the benefits of it are still being felt today in the local region. Developers that have met with publishers in China, they're building great relationships and making great games and finding success in that. And we also tied in with, that's our local MP in the middle, so we've begun to get political backing and support from our local enterprise partnerships. And these are all important things. But it's always important, I think, to remember why we do these things. And George Osborne's event, GamerBake, that he runs all over the country, we were lucky enough to help him host an event, and it was a fantastic success. We saw some great cakes made, and it supported Special Effect, which is a great charity. And these are the positive things that we can do with co-working spaces. At the other end of the spectrum again, we look at UKTI. We're sponsoring companies to go out to GDC, and we hosted the event where companies could sign up, and UKTI paid for them to go out there, introduce them to lots of company, and they came back with £4 million worth of actual investment. So that's £4 million worth coming into the region. I think it actually covered the Northern Powerhouse and the Midlands engine, but that's a phenomenal amount of money just from one trip. And since then, UKTI have been, or DIT as they're called now, have been great supporters of what we're doing. So this is all great. Hopefully you're saying this is working, we're making great stuff. What's happening in the industry? It's growing. We're seeing that the industry itself, the demand for the products we're making is growing. And the tools that we have, we're seeing huge productivity increases. Agile methodology is working pretty well at the moment. It's one of the best methods we have. It's allowing for games to produce more effectively, more efficiently. The tools that we have, including Maya, engines like Unity, essentially, what I'm doing today with a team of 4 would have taken 20 people 5 years ago, literally just 5 years ago. Now it's possible with just 4 people. Remote working has become normal. We see studios like Slightly Mad. They're very happy to work remotely, so we can have people in our hubs and other hubs around the UK working together, even though they're working remotely. But it's great to have that space away from home where you can comfortably sit down and not feel like you're tied to it. We've got a growing market, as I mentioned there, and great opportunities coming. I think last year, I'm sure I'm teaching you to suck eggs, but our industry was worth around $90 billion and is set to grow. Again, stealing UKey figures there. And there are great opportunities coming up. I saw this AR market forecast just the other day, and I thought, okay, 2-3 years from now, there are going to be some really exciting opportunities for us, not just in games, but the technology we produce to really benefit from all the hard work that we've put in. So what's the problem? We do have a problem. And if you look at what the majority of UK companies are, they are small to medium enterprises, around 95% according to the Blueprint for Growth. So it's somewhere around that figure, which is a heck of a lot of companies. And we are finding that the funding is there, but it's not quite set up to benefit the people that are, it's not quite unlocking the potential that is available to us in Europe as game developers. So the studios are struggling to form on the funding that's there. They're struggling to gain the traction that they need to find a good publisher. And they're struggling to find that momentum to jump that gap of success and failure and become sustainable and ideally successful studios. I think I stole this idea from Simon Sinek, but essentially we've got this, hopefully you can see this gap that we're all trying to get across, and it starts, you've got some money put away, or you're putting your own time into it, you might be doing a day job and making your games, and then you might find that there's a grant. And I think UK Games Fund are doing some fantastic work, but there are also minefields of grants that require that you hire people, but you don't spend the money that you're given on those people, and they can trip you up, essentially. If you're lucky, you might find an investor that will give you a seeded enterprise. You can work with a seeded enterprise investment scheme, which gives you around 150,000. But in my experience, that is a large sum of money, but it's not quite enough to get you where you need to be, to get that momentum, to get across the gap. People do make it. People do make games in their bedroom and find that success, don't get me wrong. But I think we're not quite unlocking the potential of the talent in Europe with the funding that's there. For example, EIS, which is the larger version of SEIS, is not widely available, if at all, to game developers in Europe right now, and certainly not in the UK. Those sums of money are about $500,000. If we could, I think the sweet spot would be 350,000, with which we could do a heck of a lot, including user acquisition, and show that publishers are interested or should be paying attention to what we're doing as small studios. Again, 95% of the studios in the UK are around that size. And we're trying to get across to that sustainability. If you go to the other end of the spectrum, if you do find that success, there are lots of people out there, like the British Growth Fund, for example. They can provide, if you can show you're doing 1 million revenue, they can provide you with the money that you need to significantly grow. So we've got this gap at the moment. What's my point? We need to fix that gap, but that's going to take time. We're collaborating with the government. The government are very interested in what we're doing in Europe and across the UK. I think we need competitions for that further funding. It's not just about giving people money, it's about finding the best people and unlocking their potential, and we need to have competitions for those SEIS, those EIS funds, and encouraging people to take part and recognizing excellence. And we need senior industry leadership. It is out there, but they're often very busy people. We need more of it, and we need time. We need to further adapt to the environment. And this is where hubs can help significantly. I think they are helping, but there's still more to do. Hubs are beginning to talk to each other and talk about how we can have road shows of companies like Unity or Autodesk traveling around the country, supporting each other as they go, and we can lower running costs at the same time. Often when we have studios come in that have just got their grant, they're saying, right, I've got 25K, what can I do here? Well, we charge you $150 per desk per month. They're saying, I don't really want to risk that $150 per desk per month on this because I've got 25K to make my prototype. And really, when you look at it at that scale, that is fair enough. What we're doing there is failing to unlock that potential. So I guess what we're going to try in the Arch next is the Zifferblatt. Is anyone familiar with the Zifferblatt? So this is a relatively new idea. It's a Russian word that means clock face. And essentially, you pay per minute. In this case, you're paying 6 pence per minute for when you're in. So you come in as if it were a hotel, you check in at the front desk. If you're there for 1 minute, you pay literally 6 pence. Whilst you're there, you can use whatever you want. Now, I've gone through the figures on it, and I figured certainly for our area, the rates, how much it would cost. We could charge 9 pence per minute for you to come in, and you could use the space very flexibly, very adaptably. You could have your meetings, you can come and go as you will. If you're staying there permanently, you'll end up paying about £800 per month. But at that point, we can have a conversation and say, well, wait a minute, you could quarter your costs here and just pay $200 per month. And I think the conversations that we've had with potential developers, this would be the key to helping to unlock their potential in the current environment. In time, I think the funding situation will sort itself out, regardless of what's happening politically. There is a lot of goodwill behind what we do. But right now, I think this is something that we're going to try going forward. I just want to finish on remembering that Supercell started with 5 people. They are one of the most successful, if not the most successful studio in the world. And Ilkka Paananen said, get big by thinking small. Clash of Clans and Heyday were each developed by teams of just 5 developers. Even now, they are global smashes. Each team has a team no bigger than 15. So we've got 95% of developers just in the UK are small teams, 1 to 5. There's potential in there that needs unlocking. And I think hubs are a part of that solution. And what I've proposed there is going to be what we try next. But there's still work to do. There's great opportunities, but I think as a continent, we need to work on unlocking that potential. That's it from me. I want to say thank you very much for your time.